Today marks the UN International Day of Older Persons, and it comes at a time when many elderly people around the world have been isolated by COVID-19 lockdowns. Well, a Wits study has been examining how social distancing during a pandemic affects the elderly in rural South Africa. It's been asking the question, is it possible that COVID-19 has affected people's cognitive function because there is a link between mental health and socialization? To discuss, we're joined by the co-author, Dr. Wanger, a researcher at the South African Medical Research Council and Wits Agincourt Research Unit in Mpumalanga. Doctor, thank you for being with us. Explain this fascinating link between mental health or cognitive ability and being social.
Absolutely. Thank you, Francis, and good evening to you and your viewers, and thank you for having me on this program. So globally, we've seen that social interaction is linked with cognition, and this is extremely important, especially as we age. So as we age, we know that there is cognitive decline, and that's part of the natural aging process. And what studies from around the world have shown is that social interaction can actually mitigate some of that effect. And what we found in rural South Africa, as part of research called the Pulse study, which is an African aging study, longitudinal study, is we found that individuals who have cognitive impairment have smaller social networks. Smaller social networks in terms of the numbers of individuals that are in these networks, smaller networks in terms of the size. So a lot of these individuals in their networks live in their homes or live close by, and also a lower number of interactions with those in their social networks. And so extrapolating this evidence and looking at the current situation, the current global COVID-19 pandemic, we can postulate or hypothesize that perhaps due to the necessary regulations that are in place, there is a reduction of social interaction, and as a result, a further negative impact on the cognitive process in specifically older people.
So is this still a research question, or are you saying that there's enough evidence to say that COVID-19 has affected the cognitive function of elderly people?
Sure. So at present, it's still a research question. However, the answer that we do have right now is an association between lower cognitive function and social interaction. And currently, ongoing work at the MRC Wits Agincourt Research Unit in rural Mpumalanga is really setting out to build on this work and really, as you rightly mentioned, Francis, to answer this question in terms of the current pandemic.
Yeah. If social connection helps, at least we live in an age where people can use the telephone and use Zoom and things like that. We know that many elderly people have comorbidities, so concerns, and they have been isolated. Does that technology help, or is it not the same as a close interaction with other people?
Absolutely. So any type of social interaction would be helpful. And obviously, for our own, business and work, we've used technology, extensively. For me to be doing this interview on Skype like this is use of technology. I think that to answer your question, yes, I think any type of interaction would be positive and would be good. I think the one thing that we should also recognize and perhaps learn is we can also use technology in our social lives. And especially engaging in the elderly. As you rightly mentioned, we found in Agincourt that numerous, the large majority of older people have cell phones. And so I think it's all of our responsibilities to perhaps pick up the phone and call our older gogo or older family member and speak with them during this time.
Yeah, even in rural areas in South Africa, which is the focus here, what is the takeaway for younger South Africans with elderly parents or grandparents in those rural areas? We are in lockdown level 1, so mingling is allowed, but still many elderly have those comorbidities. So how do you balance the need to be social with the instinct to protect them as well?
That's right, and that's a great question. And I think that the first thing that we need to do is absolutely, as you just articulated, is to recognize that, our older family members or older neighbors are at maybe a greater risk for contracting the virus. And so I think any interaction that we do engage in with these older folks is smart, as you mentioned. So respecting that social distancing, wearing masks when we do that, And I think that's really the first step, is to recognize that vulnerability. The second thing, I think, is to recognize a slightly different vulnerability, and that's kind of the burden that the pandemic places on older folks. I think that there is a fear that a lot of older people are feeling, because of their advanced age and the risk that places on them. So helping older people to go about their activities of daily living, whether it's going to the shops, for food, or whether it's helping them to access chronic medication or their pensions. I think that that's really important. And then finally, as we discussed just a moment ago, I think it is important that we reach out to them, whether it is through cell phones, whether it is in person, or whether it's a good old-fashioned letter, or if an older person does have emails, to email. But I think any type of interaction that we can do at this moment with older people would certainly improve their chances of not having a larger effect on their cognition due to the pandemic.
Yeah, very interesting research. Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan Wanger, a researcher at the South African Medical Research Council and Wits Agincourt Research Unit in Mpumalanga. Stay with the full view after 7 o'clock. By the way, we will be speaking to the national spokesperson of the Department of Education, Elijah Mpumalanga, on the 2020 matric exam countdown. For now, let's take a look at your weather. I'll be back shortly.